Do you believe every individual deserves to know how the government is affecting his or her life? I'm here to discuss briefly the roles the government plays in your everyday life. Understanding how the government operates is critical in understanding your rights as a citizen. There are essentially three branches of government, and each of these three branches operates in different reasons for our government. There are a few different reasons why you should understand the purpose of these three particular given branches. Our founding fathers, when they formed the government, they set it up in a way as one branch never being too powerful. I found this interesting because the typical American citizen doesn't have an understanding of the functions of the government. They are too quick to blame oversights on the present rather than realizing that there are other areas within the government that also functions to decide how our society operates and which laws will be enforced. It's important to understand that the three branches overlap. Before we get into how they overlap, let me first give you an overview of the three branches. The three branches are the judicial branch, the legislative branch, and the executive branch. If your rights are ever violated, you need to understand how to fix the situation after it occurs. Each of the three branches that function within the government serve a specific purpose. The first branch we will discuss is the executive branch, which is composed of the president and his cabinet. The second branch is the judicial branch, which is comprised of the courts of the nation. And lastly will be the legislative branch, which is composed of the Congress and the Senate. Now, the most widely discussed branch is the executive branch. We discuss this branch more often than any other. It's comprised of the president as well as the president's cabinets, which are both appointed by the president himself. It is important to understand that the president does not create laws, nor does his cabinet. If laws pass that you do not agree with, rather than not voting for that president, understand that the president does not have authority to create laws or to oversee laws that have been previously passed. One important set of authorities that the president does have is he has the authority to sign treaties with other nations, and he also has control over the U.S. military. The second branch is the judicial branch. This branch is comprised of the courts of the nation. There are federal courts as well as state courts, which we will discuss more specifically later. Within the federal courts lies the appeals courts. This is where it becomes more important to understand the distinction. Appeals court has the authority to oversee decisions of the other courts. So if you are accused of a crime or a family member of yours was accused of a crime they didn't commit, this is when your understanding of the functions of the government becomes important. You need to understand where you will go for recourse, and that would be the judicial branch or appellate courts. The Supreme Court ensures that the Constitution is followed. This is by all courts, state and federal. There are primary functions to enforce the Constitution. The judiciary does not create laws. They simply interpret and enforce laws. The final branch is the legislative branch, and this is where laws are created. The legislative branch is composed of the Senate and also Congress. These are elected individuals who you and I elect. You and I decide who sits in these positions, so it's important to understand when you vote and what exactly you're voting for. The laws can be changed based on Congress and the Senate. The founding fathers set up a check and balances system so that the executive branch checks the legislature so that the president can veto laws. The judicial branch is also overseen by the legislative branch and so forth. It is a checks and balances system so that not one particular branch can become too powerful. You will see several laws that have come up within the Supreme Court that have been overturned by the Supreme Court's decisions. You will also see laws at times that are specific to a particular citizen versus the United States or versus the president for an action he created. The president, of course, will not be in prison for this, but the Supreme Court can overturn that.